What is up, everybody? This is Silver Spook, and this is the Silver Spook video on Renfield, the movie, and also those blood-sucking parasites, both the literal vampires and abusive relationship partners. And we'll talk about lots of different bloodsuckers, but including lawyers. But let us start with the movie. We just watched it, so if you were like, I don't know what I'm watching, I got nothing. I don't have time to watch 2 seasons of Catherine the Great, the TV show. This is definitely like a fun movie you can just throw on. It's kind of like Dungeons and Dragons. It's entertaining. It's funny. It's not really super scary. It's actually, I would say, it's more on the camp. He's more on the Renfield's more on the camp edge of the spectrum when it comes to vampire movies. Nicolas Cage's his 1940s like black and white Nosferatu. The beginning is pretty entertaining because you have Nick Cage. You know, he's like, what is he, 50 something, 60. He's definitely like in the age where he's like perfect to play this character. Also, is a Francis Ford, who filmed the 90s Dracula movie with Keanu Reeves and Gary Oldman. I believe so it's definitely in the family that, you know, the Nick Cage and his family have been making Dracula movies for some time. So it's kind of makes sense that he would kind of take this role on now. Anyways, he does play this very entertaining black and white, like the original Universal Monsters Dracula, and that part's pretty funny. It's like it's even shot in the square aspect ratio, and it has like intentionally really cheesy effects to kind of harken back to that time in that beginning part. Like there's like full CG later on and all that kind of stuff, and there's lots of blood and guts. But that part was I found that part really. I like that part. And then there was of course you have Nicholas Hoult playing Renfield. Let me just grab the actual plot of this movie. Am I not live? I should be live, but my computer is not showing that. Anyways, so it does star Nicolas Cage. There's two Nicks, all the Nicks. You know, they got all the Nicks. You know, except for Stevie, they're missing that one. They should have thrown her in there. That way we could have had a royal flush of Nicks. Anyway, so Nicolas Cage, Nicholas Hoult, Awkwafina, Ben Schwartz. Ben Schwartz, like around in the Silver Spook household, there's a lot of running Ben Schwartz inside references, because for some reason I watched a lot of these kind of obscure early days Ben Schwartz videos when he was showing up on this college humor video page called Jake and Amir. And so Ben Schwartz is also in Parks and Rec as John Ralphio. So it's always fun to see that very silly person and his very silly face and his very silly style of comedy. But anyways, and he also plays BB-8. Anyways, so Ben Schwartz is really funny in this as well. Let's see. So let's look down. I'm just trying to get the plot. Renfield is a tortured aide to his narcissistic boss Dracula, and is forced to procure his master's prey to do his every bidding. However, after centuries of servitude, he's ready to see if there's a life outside the shadow of the Prince of Darkness. So that's the basic synopsis. It has just come to streaming, so that's another reason why we're watching it now. It is hilarious and ghoulish. It is fun. It is a bloody blast. There's a lot of blood, that's for sure. Can I be a narcissistic codependent, and the art of turning you on you. You are shown in the most. These are shown in the most relatable relationships, so one can be liberated oneself, I think. So that's a lot of people have noted that it's definitely a show that really does center Yeah, some people don't like it obviously, but it really does center, this movie does center the relationship between um the Dracula, Count Dracula, Nicolas Cage, and the Renfield character. And for those who don't know the story of Dracula, you can look up, who is Renfield and who was Dracula. But basically, Renfield is a character who, over a century ago, he he has a wife and a child, but he dreams of more. He believes that he can have a real estate. What was his actual job? Was he a lawyer? What was Renfield's actual job? Renfield's job before Dracula. What was his? There's some gaps in your work history, Mr. Renfield. Renfield was a solicitor who traveled to Transylvania to meet with Dracula rather than Jonathan. Renfield is a lawyer who becomes Dracula's henchman after visiting the vampire's palatial lair, Castle Dracula. So that's what Renfield actually is. So R.M. Renfield is a supporting antagonist in Bram Stoker's 1897 novel Dracula, several of the film and TV adaptations. So obviously this has a lot of history to it. The most common version of the characters is Count Dracula is insane and completely devoted slave. He's been betrayed by a lot of people, obviously, and like as has Dracula, since Bram Stoker wrote that in the 1897. The character Renfield in the movie is not. He does have bugs, and he does eat his bugs. And one of the plot points of the Renfield movie is, in order to get his superpowers, he has to open up this little. It's almost like a bottle of pills, but instead of pills, he has roaches and ants and centipedes and whatever else. And after munching a bunch of bugs, like the Dracula, part of the it's the lore of Dracula, right? I don't know how much of this is the same. I don't know how much of this is canon to the 1897 Bram Stoker story, but when he munches some bugs, he draws power from the bug's life source, and then becomes superhuman and can punch people's heads off and throw 500-pound guys, into ceiling fans, which happens, and make literal mountains of bodies. Which if you want blood and guts, this movie has that for you. It's got a lot of it. That's for sure. And so Renfield's character is, he kind of has temporary slight superpowers. He becomes I guess he's played Beast before, so there's some Beast it's like, imagine X-Men's Beast, the blue Marvel mutant character who can hang from the ceiling from his feet, kind of looks like a beast and can lunge and jump, runs on all fours and stuff like that. He actually does a beast move where he lunges beast style from a floor of an apartment building three stories up and punches someone in the face. So he's kind of Nicholas Hoult has played the Beast, so I'm saying. So he's kind of it's almost kind of like that. He goes into beast mode without the blue skin and the fur and the eyes and the fangs. He just gets yellow eyes. He goes Edward Cullen mode. Nicholas Hoult eats some pills, and then he goes Edward Cullen mode. I think he's gonna play the next Twilight vampire. I want to forecast the future with my oracular psionic abilities. Nicholas Hoult is gonna play Edward Cullen in the next Twilight remake. Anyways, so Renfield's character is somebody who is coming from a place of he is a slave. He's a servant of a Dracula, so the movie Renfield kind of goes into it, kind of focuses on Renfield's character rather than focusing on Dracula and people surviving Dracula. The Dracula attacks, the vampire. There is a vampire hunter at one point. There is a priest. In Renfield, there is a priest who is trying to exorcise and creates this guy here is creating a circle of protection to stop the vampire from to basically capture the vampire in like a ring of some kind of holy powder or salt. They use cocaine powder to make a circle of protection, and they find the instructions for this on Wiccan Tumblr, which is really funny. So shout out to I watched this channel, this another not super known channel called Angela Symposia on this YouTube. Sometimes just for fun. It's like it's got all of your it's got all of your Wiccan lore. It's got all the chilling adventures of Sabrina, YouTube Academia Tube, docu videos that you want. You can get all the background, and so it's very like there's like a little nod to that, which is like it's like thank you Wiccan Tumblr. It's like thank you Wiccan YouTube, so that now we can stop Nicolas Cage by making a circle of protection from like a pound of cocaine. So yeah, it's a cocaine circle of protection. It's pretty funny. That was fun. Yeah, anyways, so yeah, and so and so you have that guy, you have the was it the vampire hunter? There is a vampire hunter. He shows, but mostly, I think, is it Helsing? That is the who is the vampire hunter in Dracula? Is it Helsing? Yeah, Van Helsing. That's right. Okay, so Van Helsing does show up. I think he actually, or a Helsing like vampire hunter does show up for a second there with the priest. This guy, yeah. He's only in there for like 30 seconds. Though. He's not really in there for very long, the Helsing character. And so it doesn't really focus on because a lot of times obviously what's his name? Speaking of X-Men, Wolverine has also played a Dracula universe character. I think he played Van Helsing, didn't he? Let me just check that. Not Hugh Grant. Hugh Jackman, Van Helsing. We talked about Hugh Grant last time. This is not Hugh Grant Day. Hugh Jackman did play Van Helsing, right? Yeah. So and so like sometimes the Dracula movies focus more on the vampire hunting and the fighting. That's like Van Helsing that came out about a little over a decade ago. And sometimes, obviously there was the Gary Oldman, like that we talked about with Keanu Reeves. Gary Oldman, in the 90s, Bram Stoker's Dracula, right? I don't know if you've seen this one. And so that one focused more on the kind of, it's from the perspective of, Jonathan Harker. It's more about coming and then the horror of being in the with his boob head, being in the unfortunate entanglements with a boob-headed Transylvanian lecherous creepazoid who eats his neighbors. Anyways, so there's you have like these are all like different perspectives on the Dracula story, and so the Renfield one kind of focuses on Renfield himself. I guess he's a little bit like Igor from Dr. Frankenstein's Igor, which I know is like there's been a lot of adjustments. The original story, Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, is not like the Universal Studios modern American Hollywood productions of Frankenstein. But my point is that like so Renfield's character is the servant, right? So that's kind of an interesting position, interesting lens into the world, and the way it's explored is kind of because on the one hand it's kind of like you could just take him as, well, he's just a terrible servant. He's a minion. Like in another Dracula movie, Renfield might just be killed as part. He might just like do the dark bidding of the vampire. Leave me to do my dark bidding on the internet. What are you bidding on? I'm bidding on a table on eBay. That's what we do in the shadows Taika Waititi joke. But anyways, So but Renfield literally does the dark bidding, right, as the servant of Dracula. So he's like, Dracula says, I need a busload of cheerleaders. I need several dozen nuns. Give me a happily married and loving couple to feast upon. Like I don't want this low quality people. I don't want these low quality he's basically getting like drug dealers. Renfield is like, I don't want to hurt like good innocent people. I'm gonna feed Dracula because he has to feed Dracula, right? He has to bring victims for Dracula. Actually, Hellraiser and Dracula's a lot of overlap there. He has to bring Renfield has to lure in the unsuspecting victims that Dracula will be feeding on, and part of that's because Dracula can't go out during the day, right? And so Renfield's bringing in the victims. Dracula feasts upon them. Renfield goes out, and in return, what does Renfield get? Well, in return, Renfield gets to live a lot longer. He's a familiar, right? Of the Dracula. Actually, I think in What We Do in the Shadows, both in the movie and in the TV series, there's the character. Who's the familiar? What's the name? Holly knows all of this. I know, but the familiar in What We Do in the Shadows is the new one is that Hispanic character. And then the original one there was a girl. Guillermo is the one in the TV series, and in the original one there was a girl. But there's actually kind of that relationship, like the Guillermo familiar is that guy right there. He's constantly kind of it's a similar relationship to the vampires, where Guillermo is having to help the vampires do what they need. He does their shopping, he does their laundry, he does everything. He is their servant. He's like their wife, in the not so good use of that term. Is like, does all the work and for no appreciation, and gets kind of crapped on all the time. And it's kind of like, at least certainly for the beginning of the series. So the familiar is in servitude to the vampires, and act as their servants in the hope that they will eventually be turned to a vampire as themselves as a reward. Well, so in the What We Do in the Shadows universe, right? It's kind of like, I will eventually get to turn into a vampire myself, live forever, have power, and etc. And become very sexy, or whatever the thing that they tell you it is. That's what they say in What We Do in the Shadows. But anyways, many familiars carry out tasks that can be difficult for vampires to do, like covering up sunlight in their homes, helping them travel to distant places by shipping them, finding other humans for vampires to eat, and hiding evidence of victims. So the vampires like traveling in their coffins, and so this they need help with the shipping, like interacting with the real world outside of their coffins and their palatial castles is difficult for vampires, I suppose. And so they have their familiars to help with those things. And so so that's basically what, just I bring that up because that's what Renfield's doing. But in a certain sense, you can already kind of see in these like, I mean, just reading it like that, it's basically the familiars are basically they are the abused housewives of the vampires, right? Now of course, like, sometimes the familiars, they have this kind of, I'm gonna get something really good out of it. I'm gonna get some immortality. So there's this kind of they're kind of aspirant in one sense, but a lot of the time the familiars, they just get abused forever. Like in the first What We Do in the Shadows, the girl's basically like has to leave one of the vampires because the vampire keeps promising to turn her, and she's like, I'm like 40 something. I would like to kind of stay at an age. I don't want to be turned when I'm 70. And the vampire's like, no, just bring me a few more victims. Just bring me a few more victims, and then we'll turn you. And so she eventually leaves that because she knew that that's the vampire is definitely the parasitic bloodsucker, using her, the familiar, as his personal unpaid laborer, basically, right? It's kind of like working for a capitalist boss. I mean, obviously, it's like working for any exploited, underappreciated, unrequited, abused labor, whether that is a traditional Western wife, capitalist boss, your McDonald's boss, or any boss, right? Because you are never paid the value that you're worth. Otherwise, what you're actually worth. Otherwise, the parasitic business owner would not hire you. They're not there to give you exactly what you deserve. They're there to give you as little as possible. In fact, so that they can squeeze the money from their peasantry, right? Or their workers, or their wives, or their, slaves, right? Ideally, slaves is the most revenue you can get. But in all senses, right? In a wider sense, all certainly Western unjust hierarchical systems, which they all are, feudalism, the Western feudalism, capitalism, slavery, and also household relationships, right? And also romantic relationships, which intertwine with the household relationships. They're all fundamentally parasitic, unjust, blood-sucking, vampiric, right? And I talked about that a lot. I've done at least 2 or 3 other vampire movies in the last 6 months, so I won't spend too much time on that and come back to Renfield. So this does center that relationship, though, right? Which is Nicholas Hoult is character Renfield. It wants to kind of coming back to him, so when he was not that successful in his life, right? Or not as successful as he wanted to be as a lawyer, right? He travels to Transylvania because he's seeking out a wealthy and powerful count. Like, now, Count Dracula, right? Count Dracula. You already have the feudalism in there, right? Because what is a count, right? A count is a member of the Euro feudal structure, right? Which is also a capitalistic structure, but it's also a unjust hierarchical structure. But a count is a medium level in the echelons of lords, barons, right? Marquis, and Marquess, and then the dukes and duchesses, and then kings and queens. Count is just one of the ranks, right? It is a feudal rank, and it is somebody who has some level of nobility already. So there is already that in this Dracula story, which is that there is a economic and class reality to the Dracula story, which is about an aspiring lower class person, right? And yes, he's a lawyer and such, but you weren't necessarily doing very well as a lawyer in those times. Like, and even now, you might not be doing well, especially if you're doing pro bono work to support indigenous people, trying to fight for striking workers or fight for human rights, because they don't pay pro bono workers that support actual innocent people. They only pay the lawyers who only make money are the blood-sucking lawyers like Keanu Reeves' devil's advocate that work for billionaires and defend the war crimes of the U.S. military and the and billionaires like Elon Musk when they break the legs of their workers, and that's who gets paid the real money, right? So lawyers in the Western capitalist world are also bloodsuckers themselves. So but historically it wasn't always necessarily that way, because courts were just jokes really in European history. You could buy courts if you had enough money. In the feudal times, in the 1700s, you could purchase courts. I have a whole stream just about that. It was really interesting. And in the 2020s, you can also purchase courts vis-a-vis Clarence Thomas, who was purchased by extreme right-wing Nazi propaganda mansion-filled billionaire manipulators of the U.S. court system. So judges and lawyers have always been up for sale, right? Is one thing that has to be also be remembered, which is a parasitic relation, is another form of the parasitic relationship, which is that like the Clarence Thomas must do the dark bidding of his multi-million dollar of giving, beautiful lunch giving, right, house and vacation, fancy yacht trip supporting dark master, right? And so everyone is in a vampiric relationship in the United States, certainly, and the Western capitalist world. The colonial capitalist world is just an infinite prism of a massive array of different types of parasitic, abusive, with the person who is the servant is simultaneously being abused, but is also a potential future abuser, and is, because Nicholas Hoult, right, Renfield, is getting an extended lifespan by taking innocent people. He is complicit, right, in the same way that the people who enforce the bidding, the Clarence Thomas who enforces the dark bidding, right, by pushing human rights back century, by getting rid of abortion, by getting rid of LGBTQ plus rights, making all these terrible in the so-called justice system of the United States, right, being paid to rule a certain way that benefits the agenda of a literal Nazi, right, that pays a guy who has a house full of swastikas, right? This guy who's paying Clarence Thomas to make rulings for him, right? And that's just every Supreme Court justice is crooked. Let's be real. All justices in the United States is crooked as fuck. Although that's who sentences all the black people that go do slave labor in the 2.5 million world's largest prison population. So, every one of those judges is a Renfield that's going, how much money can I get? It's $1 million to sentence 10,000 black 16-year-old boys to prison. That's the going rate. There's a Michigan case where a judge literally, for a for-profit prison like Correction Corps of America, paid a judge money to take black children and put them in prison so that they could have more slave laborers to mechanically separate Tyson chicken nuggets for 25 cents an hour. I'm not joking about that. So all of the U.S., not just the courts, I mean the police, the so-called U.S. democratic government, they're all corrupt. Prostitutes being paid by their most, they're not, sex workers work. Sex workers are more honest than any American politician. They're just paid by whoever gives them the most money, even from AOC all the way to DeSantis. They're all a bunch of Renfields, right? They just take money, throw all their people under the bus, and then they go on, and then they go to the castle. They go to the vampire's castle, right? It's called Elon Musk's mansion, or the Koch brothers' palace, right? And then they go to a Goldman Sachs speech and they get $1 million, like Hillary Clinton, Obama, and Trump all have done these types of things, right? They give a speech to their master, right? That go, okay, now that's a good speech. Here's $1 million. I don't care what you said. I'm just here to buy you, Renfield, right? And so that's how the U.S. political system work, the judicial system work, and all the Western capitalist colonial political system, judicial systems, and lawmaking systems work. And also all the corporations, the private sector is the same or even worse, where everyone who works for a corporation works under an abusive board of directors, and the CEO and the CFO and the CTO C-suite that are maintained by who? The shareholders, who are 90% plus of them are all millionaires and billionaires, all the parasitic capitalist class that then determine everything about what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and what you're going to do with all the products that you make in your capitalist workplace. So fundamentally, everything about the colonial capitalist world is a Dracula to Renfield relationship, like literally everything. It's without question. And that's why you always feel like Renfield is very relatable to Western people. Like, I'm an indigenous Native Hawaiian person, but I was forcefully Americanized. I was forcefully colonial capitalist Westernized. I was forcefully Dracula-fied or Renfield-fied. It's really the same person if you think about it. It just depends on, you are differently. When anyone under you is your Renfield and anyone above you is your Dracula. That's another way to think about it in all Western systems. Anyone under you is your Renfield. You are simultaneously both Dracula and Renfield at all times, right? The manager at a McDonald's is the Dracula of all of the employees. And when the McDonald's manager berates and screams at the employees and then threatens them with being fired and then cuts all of their pay or doesn't give them a raise for 6 years, it gives them a 20 cents raise after 6 years. That is them. That is the McDonald's manager is Dracula blood sucking their employees, right? That are sweeping their floor, getting burning hot French fries thrown in their face by angry customers, and being underpaid for that the whole time, have no health care. And then, but above the manager, right, you have the CEO or the upper management of McDonald's, who are then sucking out everything they can out of the lower manager. And then you have the entire government of the United States that's also going, well, you know, we don't care about. I mean, the manager might not be making enough to have their own housing and their own needs being met. And the government of the United States is sucking everything they can out of that manager. And everyone along the way, you know, is doing some amount of abuse. And that's a major point of Neofeud as well, which is that everyone along the main thing is that for the people at the very top, everyone in the hierarchy of Renfield to Dracula relationships continues to engage in that and not break out of that system, right? It doesn't really matter how bad the blood sucking gets. It doesn't matter how many people die. It doesn't matter how many people are hurt, killed, maimed, right? It doesn't matter what happens. All that matters is that the relationships continue. Because if all of the relationships in that hierarchy stop functioning, according to the plans of the people, the highest Draculas, the billionaire class people, the imperialists, the neocons, in a global planetary sense. If the ways of the entire society start to shift into non-abusive relationships, right? Then at the micro level, if it spreads to the higher levels, then the Draculas will all die, because, you know, the billionaires won't exist, because that have their unjust exploited it, because everyone along the way is sucking blood into the higher levels, right? The very top ultimately feeds on. And that's why they have to really try to crush. I mean, that's why they have to break unions. That's why nobody can ever know anything about Cuba. That's why nobody can, right? They have to try to stop LGBTQ plus people, because transgressing against the gender norms, like we've talked about last week, the unjust patriarchal gender rule norms, as this heteronormativity, is another, the men blood sucking off the wives, the women and femme-coded people, right? And the straight, you know, justifying their power over LGBTQ plus people as Nosferatus against the Renfields of the LGBTQ plus people, who are doing all of your entertaining and all your drag queen that actually do this. Actually, most people who do acting, even if they're acting as straight cis, you know, toxic dudes, in order to actually act well, you actually have to be very much in touch with your emotions and your feelings. You can't just be like a Western straight cis male dude who doesn't know, is like completely oblivious to his emotions. You have to be able to control your emotions to accurately portray. Even like they say, in his early days, John Wayne, he like was very bisexual energy given, because he had to be more, and it was very queer looking if you looked at him, because he had to, in order to actually portray a lot of the emotions, even though his family is terrible, he was very terrible at lots of his life. You can't actually portray the full spectrum of human emotions if you don't even think you're so infantile as is the male gender role in Western patriarchal culture, right? If all you can do is anger and you can't control it, right? Anger and just like baby crying, which is what most Western men, that's a Western men gender. That's not actually conducive to being a good actor. You have to convey different emotions at different times, in different ways. But then later on, when he made all his money, then he got a lot shittier. Not to say that he didn't always have those tendencies, but John Wayne himself, actually when he wasn't actually doing that much of the actual acting, then he got like a lot more, at least overtly toxic, certainly. And but anyways, so. And some people like say Hollywood's telling me that Tom Hardy doesn't care to put up with that. It's just like, well, you know, I'm Tom Hardy and I suck dicks, and I'm like, I am not a straight cis guy. And like, what are you gonna do about it? I mean, I play straight cis guy sometimes in movies. You know, I played Bane. You know, I played these other. I don't know if he is, but I mean, I play characters that are coded that way, but. I'm an actor, you know? Who does acting? Who does entertainment? Who does theater? Who does art generally? A lot of the times it's queer people. You know? I mean, you can pretend like it's not all day long. But if you got rid of all the queer people, guess what? You're not gonna have any more movies, entertainment. You're not gonna have any shows, nothing. Right? Florida's finding out if you get rid of the Mexican, they've just banned their migrate. If you get rid of Mexicans, right? Florida DeSantis just passed this new rule that's very advanced digital AI run tracking of every single person in every job site, where they're building, apartments and houses and condos and roads, right? And it's like no illegals can work there. They're tracking every single person with this very advanced technology. It's like NSA cameras watching every face with facial recognition and gait, your posture recognition and your skin tone recognition. Oh, too Mexican. To identify people so that they don't show up to job sites as illegal. So only American laborers, only real American laborers can show up to the Floridian job sites. And guess what happened? All of these houses and construction and apartments and construction sites are just abandoned because no American wants to work. No American. What is that? That's code for higher level Renfields who are more Dracula now. They've come in. A lot of them were migrants, and now they've like moved up. They're like the South Central Americans who like came in seeking asylum, and now they're like, oh, no more South Central Americans come in now, right? They're like the kind of people that and so, but a lot of Florida, that's what it is. Not all Hispanics or South Central Americans, but a lot of them. And a lot of them were people who sold out their own countries. They were fascist capitalists from Bolivia, from Argentina, from Mexico. They're from Cuba, right? Especially during the Cuban Revolution, they came to Florida, and then they helped the United States do imperial military industrial complex torture in Guantanamo. Like DeSantis, he's literally was somebody who oversaw DeSantis was a kind of Count Dracula of the torture dungeons of the U.S. empire in Guantanamo, especially during the Iraq War era. That's when he was like him and Rashan Abbas. She also worked in overseeing the waterboarding and grueling, being forced. One of the things they would do it was enhanced interrogation techniques. They'll blast Matchbox 20 at 100 decibels, flash the lights on and off, and give you sleep deprivation torture for like 200 hours straight, and then they see if they will talk about, do you know Osama bin Laden? It wasn't really about that. It was about the United States just being ostensibly they're trying to find some terror, but if they wanted to find some terror, they should have just talked to the CIA, who maintained and managed the entire far right extremism to make to make proxy quagmires for Russia and China. But no, mostly the torture dungeon is because the U.S. is run by sadistic Dracula-like people. And people like DeSantis, Rashan Abbas later worked in the west side of China and the east side of Afghanistan. There's this area where she also participated in support of extremism and international propaganda. But anyway, that's another story. But these are all parasitic entities, right? Is my point. And so DeSantis himself is a person who has left. He's come to Transylvania, right? DeSantis has left his I forget where he or his parents were originally from, but he's left the places that has been exploited from country to country. The Dracula of America has imperialized all the Central and South America, Latin America, and seeking better opportunities. DeSantis and his family have come to Transylvania, and the United States has gifted him with all this money and all this power, right? Because the United States allows him to continue to exist. Let's be real about this. The Democrats don't give it. The Democrats love Republicans. Democrats love Republicans. All they do all day is pray that Donald Trump gets on CNN again, so Democrats can like raise some money, because it'll scare the sheeple that are the food of the Democrats and Republicans into giving Democrats more fundraising money. So Democrats absolutely love DeSantis. They love Trump. That's why they keep putting him on TV. They put him on TV 8 years ago, and they're putting him on TV now because it's a parasitic relationship where the Democrats and Republicans feed on all of the idiots who think that there's a democracy in the United States. I already said what it is. It's a parasitic, plutocratic, barbaristic shithole. That's what the United States is. But DeSantis is, again, coming back to that. So they exploited, but the thing is, like, right? And so when you get rid of, DeSantis needs let me say I got the video, right? You see that, you've seen that video. This is actually a good example of how abusive relationships work in a wider employment sense, right? Worker, let's see, work sites. It might have been a new one, yeah. New immigration impact, yeah. I think it goes on Twitter. Let me see if I can find it real fast. Florida construction sites abandoned. Let's see if I think it's, yeah. There's not 300 people, white people, getting ready to show up to these construction sites. We are about to pay for the acts of the governor. Trying to find the one where yeah. Thanks to the new proposed law, the GOP legislature requires companies with 25 plus employees to verify immigration status if all workers, construction, and agriculture sites around the state are empty. So you see, so this is a construction site, right? They're supposed to be building these buildings. Nobody is building the buildings, right? This is a work site. All of your huge swaths, or all of the workers for a lot of these construction and agriculture, like the actual working class, that is the actual productive classes that are needed, right? That actually, like in the Renfield sense, Renfield says, he goes to the support group and the support group leader for codependent, parasitic, abusive relationship help, right? It's like a Alcoholics Anonymous, but it's like abusive relationship haver anonymous, right? And so he's like, your abuser is telling you that he has all the power, right? But the reality is you have the power. You just have not decided to take your power back. And he's spellbound you. He's tricking you. He's mind controlling you to not take your power back. But ultimately, you have the power, right? And so the working people have the power. This is what the proof is. It's without the actual, the working people going to work, right? Like, I don't know, in a strike. Like what the Writers Guild is doing right now, like what nurses, teachers, and lots of people all over the place are doing, and Starbucks employees are trying to do right now, right? I heard in Ithaca, all of the Starbucks in Ithaca are just like not showing up to work because all the Starbucks are shutting down as they're being unionized, and Howard Schultz, the CEO, billionaire CEO of Starbucks, what does he produce other than BS and mountains of really bad takes like billionaire is a slur? Howard Schultz, the CEO of Starbucks. He's the one who said the word billionaire is racist against billionaires. The word billionaire is it is a problematic word. We should stop using the word billionaire, right? That's the contribution. Elon Musk is the most obvious. He's the easiest target for this. The guy literally broke his own Twitter, and now he has to get a woman to clean up his mess. Speaking of patriarchal, it's like women cleaning up the messes that so-called productive white dudes have ostensibly, ostensibly productive white dudes with the big ideas, right? And all Elon's big ideas have lost $44 billion of value, and a woman has to come in and clean up his fucking mess. So that's interesting. Anyways, but back onto this topic. So the point is that like without the workers showing up, without the people that actually do the work, the actual competent people actually doing the work, which is the working class people, you don't have anything, right? What do you have? You have unbuilt houses, you have unfinished roads, you have unharvested tomatoes, you have unbuilt cows.
Mga sarap sa trabaho por falta de personal no lo pueden continuar.
Parking structures and apartments and hospitals and everything.
Usually there's about 100.
I mean everything,
And it's really interesting. I'm wondering.
Oh, oops, sorry about that. My bad. Okay, I'm trying to. I should turn the audio off. So without you don't have any of the actual necessary engine of the entire reality going. You don't have, without your wife, you don't have care work. Not without your wife, but without the people that are doing the care work in the household, which is is put onto femme people in the Western culture. You don't have the dishes, you don't have the trash being done, you don't have the clothes, you don't have all the stuff. In the same way that if the janitors in any skyscraper stopped working, right? If the janitors in any skyscraper stopped working for a day or even a few days, right? Elon Musk's janitors don't have a new contract, and the janitors have gone on strike. The janitors have put up resistance because they said there's lots of the landlords that even not that we stand landlords. They're parasitic. They're parasitic Nosferatus with apartment owning characteristics. But Elon has like basically said, I'm not. He's just like cutting all the costs of Twitter, firing like thousands of people. Obviously, like everyone is doing that, but Elon was one of the ones that was famously doing much of that. And then and the janitors, he's like he hasn't even made a contract with their for their work at his own facility. So they're like, well, we're not gonna keep just doing duties for whatever donut holes you throw at us in the morning. And also we don't want this level of instability, right? And so if the janitors don't show up, places quickly fall into disrepair. And it don't function anymore, right? New York City, I mean, in France, they have like huge mountains of trash in the streets because if the garbage people don't remove garbage, right? If inside the building people who are supposed to remove the waste don't remove waste, that's the end of whatever functioning city that you had, And that's why it's part of the whole thing about in the 80s. It was like, oh, there's garbage in the streets. There's garbage in the streets. It's because there was a strike. But it's kind of like, yeah, there's garbage in the streets. But I mean, what a lot of people remember about that is there's just trash. There's trash blowing back and forth. There's old newspapers. It's like, well, maybe New York and the United States generally should have paid like working class people what it was worth instead of do neoliberal Reaganomics. But it's all like, well, working's bad and working class people are bad, and Aaron Sorkin and the other writer, right, Phillips, were caught in the 2000s saying, well, writer strikes are bad. Writer strikes are bad because writers are just a bunch of lazy bums, and most of these are just unemployed people, and now they can say they're employed because they're on strike. This isn't Aaron Sorkin, so fuck that guy. He said that out loud in the Naughty's writer strike, and so why are you standing your Dracula for, right? Of the Hollywood bosses. But anyways, so the point is though that if people choose to take their power back from the Draculas, then it's possible. This is actually why I'm like, I don't really care if Hollywood ever comes back, right? Because that whole thing is a viper den. Like, people will eventually figure out how to make shows. There is other content outside of Hollywood, the Disneys and such, right? But Disney and these huge corporations, they are just Dracula. It's like, well, let's it's actually, I would prefer like there to be cooperative, non-abusive relationship based workplaces like cooperatives where you have actual worker ownership, like for example Mondragon or Huawei, and there's many other examples, right? If you know where to look. They make it very hard to look because the Draculas don't want you to be out of their spell and take your power back. But the reality is that Silver Spook is a cooperative, what we do here, right? Where we have, it's one person, one vote, where the people who produce are also the people who do the cooking, the baking, the candlestick making, the making of the cards, the harvesting of tomatoes, the construction of the apartments, and here at the Silver Spook Games is the art and the programming of the video games, the construction of the animation, the writing of the stories. Everyone that works on projects is involved in a fair way. The decisions related to where the profit goes, what kind of things we're going to work on, right? In a way that people can, obviously mostly it's me doing that work, but certainly between Holly and myself, we try to divide all of the work that we do, because Holly does do a lot of this work, and Holly does like a disproportionate amount of, like I said, a lot of that the caring work and the household work and managing work and lots of other work. Holly also works on other projects, right? And so I'm not the CEO, right? Because most in a traditional cis hetero Western Jordan Peterson man-woman relationship, right? It's the dude doesn't literally is just a parasitic, almost like a cyst on the woman, especially nowadays, right? The dude's job is to play video games, not have a job, and the wife has a job and then cooks and cleans. That's a literal Nosferatu Dracula relationship, just sucking all of the lifeblood and energy, right? It's like I'm just over here, playing my fort of duty, call of overnight, and what, no job, no nothing, and the wife is just supposed to cook and clean and do your emotional labor, and then also be your freaking flashlight. That's a total all Dracula relationship. So you see how like those kind of relationships, right, inside the household, also reflect outside the household relationships that are abusive, parasitic relationships. Anyway, so that's tomatoes. That's tomatoes. I think, I don't know what that is. Is that tomatoes? It's some kind of agricultural product. Okay, so let me get back to the track of what I was doing before I kind of spiraled off a little bit. So I think that, like, when you have the Renfield relationship with Dracula is one of Renfield, as I said, he kind of simultaneously feels abused, but he's like, I guess he has done terrible things, right? He had a wife. Renfield had a kid, right? Before he went to Transylvania to try to aspire to become more powerful, more wealthy, right? And I think that brings in the feudalism conference, as I said earlier, because it was under feudal, ostensibly, it's just feudal, which is not capitalist Europe. Although if you have mass quantities of money, you can buy judgeships, and also the feudal lords did make money selling there's this. I was listening a lot to Cake, because I made this song. I'm going to show this song later on today, called Symphony. It was a song called Short Skirt, Long Jacket, and I don't know, Big Teal might have hey, what's up, Big Teal? Also, you might have already seen the video, but another one of their songs is called Symphony in C by this 90s very outer avant-garde alternative band called Cake. Very well known if you lived through the 90s and you're an eldritch, archaic millennial like myself. But the Cake band, they made this song called Symphony in C, which is about an Austrian feudal nobleman who squeezes money from the peasants to commission a symphony in C, where he pays a Mozart, right? He pays a well-regarded, patronized Austrian musician, composer, to create a symphony with what? With money, right? So so this idea that there was this was the feudalism, and then there was the capitalism, and the capitalism is not as good. The feudalism was better, but maybe we might do a communism. But actually, the reality is the differences are, yes, there was title and hereditary aristocracy and such, but the reality, and I talk about that a lot, but you still have a billionaire capitalist king of Britain who is a direct line all the way back for centuries. You even have a 1,000-year-old cherry sitting on, right? I'm speaking, of course, of King George's Buckingham Palace. Literal, he is just, that's mask off feudal. That's just mask off feudal. There are also mask on feudal, right? Like the fact that Elon Musk is the descendant of Dutch lords and ladies who had colonial emerald mines, who squeezed the money from the emerald miners, so that Elon Musk could commission a waifu symphony in G flat major by Grimes, right? So where he becomes the god machine in Deus Ex, right? So there's shadow feudal relationships, and Elon Musk is less mask on when he self-declared himself the techno king. So he put feudalism back in the forefront. But the reality is, the feudal capitalist division is very superficial, artificial, and Western, and that's not the point of my talk. I'm just spiraling off in that direction. So Count Dracula gives Renfield power, but I did want to talk about the bit because there is an economic reality to this. So it's not just like Dracula is, Dracula is just using the familiar to get everlasting life, and it's in exchange for his soul, and all that's happening. All the supernatural, fantastical, eldritch, magical, tabletop role playing, fantasy stuff is all in there. But then there's also an economic reality. There's a hard, there is a Marxian analysis. Even though I recently read that Mark spent most of his time not going to sleep. He stayed up all night long, and it would just get into. He basically make his equivalent of a YouTube video, and spent a lot of his time being really petty, and basically didn't work whenever he didn't feel like it. So it's kind of, Marx was definitely the useless dude in a lot of senses of his time. And then he ended up writing some true things, but then most of the time he actually was like dicking off. And he's like, all I want to do is spend time being a nobleman and doing archery and reciting poetry with my friend the good Baron, the good Lord Byron. No, it's actually like I'm partially joking, but Marx did actually spend a lot of time not working. And then when he felt like working, then he worked, and then he didn't when he didn't want to. So because he did have access to privilege, even though people like to pretend like he was absolutely the bottom of the working class. No, those people were in the global south. Anyways, but so there's an economic reality to Renfield's position, which is that he is trying to aspire to gain more wealth, gain more power, right, in the European system. It's really like the Transylvania thing itself is there's a lot of Western European stereotypes about the East, right? I have many streams about West and East relationships, right? You can go back and watch the one about the Shadow and Bone if you want to learn about that one. That was one of the recent ones that I put out there relating to how Western Europe and let's just call it what it is. How Western Eurasia, or really should just be Western Asia. Like Europe is such a tiny little, it's the ass end of Asia. That's like calling it Corasia. Eurasia is almost like calling it Corasia because Korea had almost as much people as the entirety of Europe, right? But you don't call it Corasia, you just call it Korea as a part of Asia, right? So when you call it Eurasia, that's just white supremacy, actually. Europe is just the ass end of Asia. It's just one little piece of Asia, population-wise. It's actually Korea. Korea is, I believe, if I remember, in the mid 1000, 1200, 13, 1400, before the colonial era, Korea had as many people as basically most of Europe. But I recently did one about the Shadow and Bone, and how the relationships of the West, of the Eurasian continent, right? The world island, sometimes people call it. It's the majority of the population and the resources of the world are in that landmass, right? And so, and the West to East relationship is one of the West constantly berating, projecting its own crimes on the East, calling the East genetically inferior. Anyone who is Asian, anyone who is, your forehead looks too slanted, your eyes look too narrowed, you're Oriental, and that's a thing that's bad. And anything, because Occident is the West and the Orient is the East, and so the Oriental is the people that when it's often said in a racist way, is everyone, just anyone East, period, right? The more West you are, the better. The British, right, and the French, we are the best, certainly in the last few centuries. We are the best of the best of the best of the best, right? And we bring in the best Aryan blood that we import from the north to make us even whiter. And everyone East is fallen, degenerate, backwards, barbarians, evil, right? And so part of the, kind of coming back to this, so part of all, even the Dracula itself, the vampires, right? It's kind of like the witches, right? Which are all very much wrapped up in anti-Semitism, right? Having their big noses, being olive green, right? And as many over millennia, anti-Semitic, and just the general racism of Europe, let's just be real, it's just a racist shithole. That's why Nazis are in power in multiple countries, including Ukraine, with the assistance of the biggest Euro settler colony, the United States. And it's like DeSantis has good friends all over Europe. There are more mask-off Nazis. Stephen Borrell, the guy who runs the EU, the guy who is the international PR, the personal spokesperson of the EU, is like a straight-up fascist. He's just like, the world is a jungle and the Garden of Europe has to clean it up. He just says that kind of shit. 2023, he just comes out and says that. He is the spokesperson for Europe. So this whole thing about the West is right. So you can see that these racist, bigoted ideas about anything East, in Transylvania, it's a place in Romania. Right? Where's Romania? Romania is a place the United States is currently supporting right-wing and far-right and militarizing to use as another fist in a proxy war against Russia that doesn't need to exist. But the military-industrial complex and the U.S. empire and the capitalists that it is supporting, right? The Dracula of the United States is constructing a Transylvanian far-right fighting force as a bludgeon against Russia. It's later, so it's actually like this, I'm not saying that like everyone ever existed in Transylvania was an angel. What I'm saying is that like there are huge preconceptions of Eastern Europeans, of Romani people, of Jewish people in Europe, of the Celtic peoples and the Gaelic peoples. There's actually a lot. I was recently reading something about. There's actually a lot more Celtic and Gaelic speaking peoples and culturally people all over Europe, and they just kind of got suppressed by who? By the unhealed descendants of the Roman Empire, that are the British and the French and all these other people. A lot of them they're simply reconstructions of they are the remnant. They are the virulent COVID strains, the human civilizational COVID strains of the mother virus in many senses that was the Roman Empire. But there were other before that. But they were one of the major ones that came through, right? Europe. And so all those, Romance language speaking peoples look to these other peoples that are in the East in one sense, and they see them as they're different. They're not under the thumb of the rulers of Western Europe. They're not. They are. And a lot of them do have. There are castles and there are counts, and Russia had a Tsar, but the worst times in Russia was when a Western European, right, was inside of the Russian capital, right, doing basically quote unquote modernizing Russia, but really what was happening was a lot of the peoples there were being subjugated into a Western European feudal Dracula to Renfield like structure, right? And the peasants were dying and starving in the famine, and then you had the Russian Revolution, right? Several decades later, right? And it's not a mistake that the colonial powers, the vast majority of the colonial powers, what is colonialism, right? What colonialism is slavery, genocide, mass murder, and mass plunder on the highest scale that the earth had ever seen until that point, right? Where 7 billion, 7 billion people were entirely subjugated under a few hundred million people in Europe, right? And so what that was what, and so what the West has done, who is the biggest vampire here, right? Is it Transylvania, right? Who is making these Dracula movies? Who is making these monster movies about Jewish people, Jewish coded people being the biggest devils, right? Marx himself also had a big anti-Semitic diatribes earlier on, and he got, maybe it's not, but then Hitler picked that up and said, no, capitalism is a problem, but what's the biggest problem? It's Jewish people, because Jewish people do the capitalism. So we should get rid of them. That's literally, that was Hitler and Goebbels. You can look that up. We have links about that. So who are making these movies, who are making these shows, who are making these stories, right? About there's evil people in Eastern Europe that are coming to get you, right? There are monsters out there. There's monsters. You got to go kill them, right? Go into Eastern Europe and kill them, especially during World War I and II, and especially go even further east and kill all the people in Russia, because in Russia there's these evil monsters. They're called communists. And if communism comes, communism will kill us all. So you should go out, so it's really like that there's a whole part of that. There's a whole underlying West-East thing that it easily gets glossed over, I think, a lot of the time. Because if people knew who the Eastern Europeans actually, right, and I say this as a native Hawaiian, people don't know anything about native Hawaiians, right? But if people actually knew who the Romani people were, who a lot of Eastern Europe peoples are, right? The fact that Polish people are paid, right? Eastern Europeans were the slave labor of the Western Europeans. Polish, to this day, right? That's why CD Projekt Red set up shop there, right? Is because you can be paid 5 times less as a Eastern European to do the cheap, unwanted labor of a Brit, of a rich British, of a rich French, right? Of a wealthy German. They exploit the East. They even have an industrial base, or they used to, until they went along with U.S. imperialism, and now they nuke their own pipelines, and they have no energy, and all their GDP is going down by double-digit percentages. But I mean, but even Germany, they love exploiting the Eastern as much as possible. Eastern Germany gets, all of the bad rap from the Western Germany, because there is a West-East capitalist, colonialist, Dracula West that sucks on the Renfield East, even within Europe. And then when you go from Europe to all of the Eurasian continent, it's also a similar relationship. And Japan also kind of comes into, that it literally massacres tens of millions of people in West Asia. And the U.S. helps Japan deny its war crimes, like Shinzo Abe and his disgusting fascist family under Imperial Japan. Because again, like Western Europe, like Western Europeans and Western Germans, the Japanese collaborate with the world-leading Dracula, that is the United States, under its capitalist neo-colonial structures. And so everything that you think you know about, I think, anyway, so long story short, that's like I'm way out into history and academic land. But I think that those economic realities of where is Eastern Europe right now is being pushed into a proxy war. I was recently listening to a Romanian talking, right, in an actual left conference with DM25. They're talking about what do we do as Europeans, and the Romanian was like, this government here is an absolute joke. We're just owned by the United States and Western capitalist powers. We have an Anglo government in Romania, and it's similar in all of my neighboring countries around here. In our Estonia and all these areas, we just have Nazi and neoliberal capitalist bloodsuckers who don't even care or respond to the actual people in our countries in Eastern Europe they don't even answer to the EU. Because the EU, it just answers to the US. The EU answers to Wall Street and to the Pentagon and to the neocon unhinged psychopaths that run that show, right? And the Romanian, so if people actually knew what the place, but it's only evil people coming out of there. But no, it's the West putting evil people in there. It's the West putting Nazis into Ukraine with Victoria Nuland and other descendants of the Brzezinski grand chessboard players, who literally orchestrated a far-right coup and stopped any actual legitimate democracy from happening there, and then engaged in mass ethnic genocide and banning of literal languages. And I can speak on that genocide because the United States banned Hawaiian language and keeps suppressing us in Hawaii about that. So actually in Hawaii, it's a very similar situation in some senses to a lot of people in Eastern Europe, because nobody knows anything about us. No American and no Westerner knows shit about Hawaiians. That's why you got to watch my streams and my Twitter threads to find out, right? Because the United States, I'm not an American. I'm a native Hawaiian. You're in an illegal occupation. You don't know shit about me, and you don't know shit about Eastern Europe either. And we include Transylvania, not Transylvania. We include Eastern Europe, which the West don't care. Anything east of West Germany is just evil. We know that, right? You're supposed to know that. That's why you don't know that it's your country putting Nazis in there, your Democrats and Republicans putting far right in all of those countries to make needless imperial war and get millions of people killed and suffer and collapse the global economy so that the U.S. and its capitalist billionaires can rule over the ashes of what remains of the human race. So that's all. So the real Dracula doesn't come out of the East. The Dracula comes out of London. The real Dracula comes out of Washington, D.C. The real Dracula comes out of New York City. But we have to keep watching movies about, Dracula is this terrible guy that comes from Eastern Europe. I'm not saying that everyone in Eastern Europe is just like all good people. The people, if you are collaborating with the United States, with the biggest capitalist imperial superpower on the planet, then you are a Renfield collaborating, but then you are a Dracula to the people under you, right? So it's like it's the same thing in Greece, where Yanis Varoufakis, who leads this has led a lot of European left resistances, right, to imperialism, capitalism, and this horrible austerity program that was forced down their throat with the collusion of EU, Brussels, and the Goldman Sachs and other major Western oligarch, super imperial powers. Sometimes Michael Hudson calls them the super imperial powers, but it's basically it's the vampiric entities, right? And so even in Greece, it's like, well, we don't really have a government. The government it's not a democratic government. It just does whatever the people that pay them lots of money to bloodlet all of the Greek people do, so that Goldman Sachs billionaires and CEOs and the major banks of the United States can be made whole on the bad bets that they made. Anyway, so all of that is anywhere that you have a so-called democracy, or even a not, but it's more efficient to have a Western electoral democracy to maintain actual tyranny and authoritarian rule. Because when you have, if it is a mask off, I'm in charge and you are all subordinate to me, it doesn't last as long, right? It's better to have elections. That's why Greece had elections, and even Rome had elections, right? The so-called great countries, that really last for a long time as empires, they eventually have some elections, so that it makes people think that there's some kind of justice in that system. Because people, if you just now sometimes you can just berate and yell and scream to control people in parasitic abusive relationships, but sometimes pretending to be nice, like Nicolas Cage's character, he does say at one point, right, coming back to Renfield, he does say at one point, you hurt me, Renfield, you are hurting me, I'm the victim here, right? Not you. I, Count Dracula, I am the victim, right? You are hurting me when you break your promise to me to bring me fresh victims. You hurt me when you don't meet my needs, right? And so that's the Democratic Jobs Party. Look, you're hurting me because Donald Trump's in charge. Please, I'm just a poor little Joseph Biden. Someone has to do something about all of these workers making no money. Look, somebody has to help me. Give me more money, because my needs as a it's like that's what abusers do. It's like, what about my needs? What about my needs? What about my needs? What about my? The point of that is that you never recognize that you, the abused person, also have needs, and you don't ever get a chance to even voice them or have them be heard. Certainly, right? By constantly just pushing everything. By the abuser playing the victim. I mean, sometimes they just yell and scream at you, and they do that. And then that's the Republicans' job, is just go like, sit the fuck down, shut up, and do what I say, march and Sig Heil, or you're all going to be, gay people, get out of the streets, drag queens, go back in the closet, women, you're all my property now, and you're going to all be Stepford wives, cooking and cleaning for no pay, and also do the work because I'm a white man. That's the Republican Party. But the Democratic Party comes in and goes like, we're all just the victim here. We'll stop this any second. All you got to do is give the U.S. government, the Democratic Party, give capitalists that own us, the Democratic Party, like another $10 to elect AOC or Joe Biden. Oh no, Donald Trump. That's why CNN put Donald Trump on. Otherwise the U.S. government will fall apart, right? If the Democratic Party doesn't come on and be the quote unquote good cop in the good cop, bad cop, good Dracula, bad Dracula relationship, right? The United States will collapse, because the people will go, wait, there's literally nobody here to stop that thing. Oh my God, we have to do something. Which is what Americans have to do. But most Americans, they're too gaslit and too coward to do shit, right? But the reality is, that's why the Democratic Party comes in, so that people can go, oh, thank God, somebody's here to help us. All I got to do is give $5 to the Democratic Party, and next year there won't be more wildfires, more cop shootings, more people in prison. I'll be making less money, but because the Democrats are going to figure this out for me. Because the U.S. government is the victim here. If we could just if I just did the right thing and just didn't let the corporations and the U.S. government and the U.S. as a whole exploit me and the rest of the world, right? And I just give my $5 and show up for 5 minutes to vote. That's not to say don't vote, but I'm just saying, if that's all that you do, that's ideally that's what you do. You do nothing except show up to vote. Then the Dracula of this entire system, this capitalist, colonialist U.S. system and Western system, it will just be solved by those people. And the Democrats are victims here, Joe Biden, there's nothing he can do. Never mind, he has executive power, and healthcare, housing, you name it. They had control of multiple houses of the government. They had legislative and executive branch control, right? And they just sat on their fucking hands, right? We all, I mean, I hope most Americans, I think most Americans subconsciously somewhere they know that that's what's happening, or they have an inkling that that's what's happening, but they look, especially the more comfortable you are, the more likely you are to chicken out and just look for the next hope. That's what liberals always say. Like, that's what my dad always says. Where's the hope? Where's the hope? Where's the hope? Just throw me another Bernie. Give me another Bernie 2.0. And then I'll just like do nothing and cling to that. Give me a Obama to give me some hope and change. Right. But that is part of the abusive relationship, right? It's kind of like, oh, but he has it so hard though. Dracula has it so hard though. I can't like resist and actually break this cycle of abuse because Dracula is suffering, and so I just have to take it on my shoulders to keep on doing all of his dishes, cooking and cleaning, and bringing him bodies of innocent cheerleaders to eat, and just like having a miserable, sad life with no friends, with no family, just dealing with his, throwing, bits of, fractured femur and guts and shit, and I have to just scrape the shit. I have to scrape the coagulated blood out of this old shitty tile and mail his coffin around and just be a miserable nothing person because it's so hard for him. It's so hard for my abuser, right? It's so hard for this guy who doesn't do anything except eat and drink blood and then plan to take on to get more power. He already has. He can fly. He can rip a person in half. He can turn into bats. He can like turn into a cloud of smoke. He can he's like the Pied Piper. He can command rats around. He can entrance people. He's all this power, right? He has all this money. He's Count Dracula. He's feudal power and capitalist power. He has lots of money. He has his fucking palace and he has feudal title. He is Count Dracula, but he's the victim here. It's like landlords are the real victim here. You seen those posts, right? It's like this landlord, I only own 100 properties. How am I supposed to go shopping at Chanel? And how am I supposed to go to Paris this year? How am I supposed to go to Paris this year if all of my tenants, don't forego their insulin medication and instead fork it over to me in $2,000 for a 200 square foot closet rent? How am I supposed to go to Paris if all of my Renfields that are all my tenants don't give me all the discretion, the money that they can, and then go take a credit card out so they can pay me the rest of it so that I can go to Paris? Like, I feel bad for landlords, right? Hashtag, cry me a fucking landlord river, right? But that is part of the tactic, is to always put all of the focus on the parasitic person's needs always. Like, people have needs that need to be met, but if somebody's like denies your existence, right? That's the major tactic, right? And like denies that you have any problems, right? It's the same thing. It's the same thing, like I said, with the husband-wife relationship. Well, honey, you can't be you like Steven Crowder, right? We watched a video of that last week. You have to think about my needs. What are my needs? What my needs are? I need you to take my dog. I need you to go feed my dog. I don't care that, you just put the gloves on. I don't care that the baby might, gets, the fetus might be damaged. You have to think about my dogs. You have to think about my needs. And if and then Steven, you can see Steven Crowder in that conversation going back and forth between good Dracula, bad Dracula. He's like, watch it. That's like, I'm gonna beat you. That's the Republican Party. You better fucking watch it. Cause I'm a man, I beat you up. Because I'm Steven Crowder. I'm a big, strong man. I beat you up. But then the next minute, he's like, oh, you're hurting me because you didn't do exactly what I say. And you didn't cook my dinner fast enough. You want to fucking beat you up. So that's part of, right? And that's Western male gender, which is like Dracula gender. Right? It's just to constantly be either angry and then threatening or crying at the drop of a hat, trying to gain undeserved sympathy to turn the situations around and manipulate people emotionally, psychologically. But these are well-honed strategies. This is why every that's why I said don't never date a guy. And cis dudes just shouldn't be dated. Like, they have to prove that they're not that guy, because so much of Western male gender, which is toxic, it's just toxic. It's not like toxic masculinity. Western culture is toxic, period. And then male gender, that is the power, the empowered Dracula gender of the Western culture, is just fundamentally a toxic gender. You can't really, that's why I say it's hard to separate out. It's become more clear now that I've discovered that through investigation, and I didn't even have the support of a Western colonized people's anonymous group like Renfield, but that I'm actually a non-binary Mahu person. I'm not actually a dude. And I'm like, so much of Western gender, I don't really want to be associated with those people. It's more visible nowadays, but it's always been that way, really. Because if all relationships are fundamentally toxic in Western capitalist colonial culture, fundamentally what is expected if a gender role is a performance, right? That people are putting. I talked about this more last week. With the Barbie, or a couple weeks ago with the Barbie, right, stream. If a gender role is a performance in terms of not just visually what you're wearing, what colors are you wearing, high heels and your hair, and the gender role is the performance of that, and also the way you speak, how you are, your attitude, the way your intonations, right, all of that stuff, the way you write emails, the way you send text messages, right. They're read. You know that they're gender because you can read them in, and people go, that sounds like a woman, even though they didn't say their name. If they have a lot more question marks and exclamation points and always asking for permission, asking, kind of like a Renfield, kind of like a person in an abusive relationship. To be the woman, the female gender in Western culture is to be an abused person, actually. If you think about it that way, and to be a male gender is to be an abuser. That's the gender. In the good cop bad cop way. Because that's the way that couples are expected. Cis heteronormative Western couples are expected to relate that way, and it's like that's why Jordan Peterson freaks out when he finds non-binary people. It's like, what am I to do with you? What am I to do with you? Am I supposed to threaten to beat you up and then cry tears to make you do what I want, or are you another fellow oppressor? I don't know what to do with somebody who is queer. I don't know what to do with you because that's all Jordan Peterson does, is abuse people, his own patients that he failed to actually give quality therapy to, actually, and he's being disbarred. He's being removed from the National Registration of Therapists of mental health specialists because he actually broke a lot of the rules. And then, but it's either that or he's talking to his fellow abusers, competing with them, or figuring out how they can collaborate temporarily to maintain their cis heteronormative capitalist patriarchal power structure. So that's actually and so it becomes very tricky because it's kind of like. So that that's where this kind of stuff comes into play. Well, what about Dracula? Dracula and his servant, but Renfield is Dracula's wife. In a Western sense. Does the laundry, does the household chores, does the domestic work, is constantly being berated and screamed at and or cried at for manipulation purposes. While the other guy does whatever he wants, sucks blood, and abuses the rest of the world. Because the white man goes to job and then he just abuses all of his workforce. Right? As the boss, extracting labor parasitically from all the workers. So this relationship is actually fundamentally, it's in one sense the Dracula and his familiar relationship is a cis heteronormative Western husband-wife relationship, which is fundamentally toxic. Which is why a lot of women are like, I don't want to marry any cis dudes. I don't want to be in such a relationship. I don't want to be in a relationship with any dude. Period. A lot of them, right? And it's kind of like, it doesn't mean like people who are like born that have because I have hair, and I have the body parts that would be that is the man body part, or you have this shape of this this phenotype, and voice, my voice sounds a certain way. I mean, actually not all a lot of me is already just in my body is not. I look at myself and I'm like, this is not actually this is not just a man body. I've had these thoughts, especially my hips and stuff. I'm gonna show a video about that in a little bit also. But whatever the case about physically, right? It's like the and I talked about with the fashion stream, right? what you are putting on, like the high heels, the stockings, the long hair, the makeup, these were constructed for men in Europe, right? In feudal capitalist colonialist Europe, all of them, right? It was for the kings, right? Like I talked about it in a previous stream. I'm trying to say that I talked about it in a previous stream, so I don't recover the whole thing, but that like that so the what counts as the expression of that gender is so much of that is constructed, it's external, and you don't really realize that. You don't really realize that until you actually, if you get into theater. Almost sometimes I think, like, in part, people who are like more in touch with their feelings, who are not adhering to toxic masculine Western culture, which is about not being in touch with your feelings, not exploring your feminine side or any side, not examining your own life and your own vulnerabilities, right? And so being more in touch with makes you better at theater and acting and art and such, because that's part of what that is, right? Is you have to understand yourself. You have to understand psychologically emotions generally, why and when you're having them, how they come about, in order to like be more emotionally mature to convey those in when you're acting in a play, right? To convey sadness, happiness, and different nuances in between, fear and anger, resentment, guilt, all these things. In order to do that, you have to break Western, especially male gender and cis heteronormative gender norms, and to another extent, actually even women gender norms, because you're not really, if you really understood where you're at, you would understand you're in an abusive, toxic relationship. So it's kind of like to just evade that and just allow the man to dictate everything, which is it's in both the abuser and the abused in those relationships. You have emotionally stunted, emotionally limited, psychologically limited people who can't get past being either the controller, the master, or the controlled and the servant. Both of those, these are not healthy. A healthy, normal human civilization would have mutual, respectful relationships between peoples generally, and between husbands and wives, and husbands and husbands, and wives, and between siblings and family members, right? But the entire society is one constructed of injustice and unjust, parasitical, economic, capitalist, colonialist, etc. relationships in the Western world, and so then it's a kind of a chicken or egg problem. Do the unjust, abusive, immature relationships in the household of controller and controlled kind of circle out into the greater society and make the whole society unjust, right? Where you have billionaires and then homeless people and then oppressed workers? Or do the billionaire lord colonizer rulers with all these masses of oppressed people circle inward into the household? And I think it is a chicken or egg thing. I think they both kind of happen together, and they both reflect each other, and they both self-reinforce, and similarly they also can self-destruct if you don't want to have that system anymore, which is why there's so much suppression of LGBTQ plus rights, because they break the gender norm, which is part of that maintenance of that hierarchical structure in the household, right? If all of the household, another way to think about it is, if every household structure had mutual, respectful relationships between all the members, right, where everyone's needs was considered, where everyone's feelings and work was valued equally, right, then the capacity to make, when you go to an absolutely totally different work structure where everything is super unjust, people be like, why do we have such an unjust work structure when the household life is so different? We have to do something about this. We have to do something about this, because now I know what it's like to live in a just structure. I don't want to. In fact, I'm not even going to go back to work. I'm going to remote work, or I'm going to build my own independent business using Instagram and etc. So I think that's a lot of why people didn't go back to work, is people figured out, number one, when the pandemic hit, number one, I don't actually love my husband. I don't even like my husband. This guy's a terrible person. I'm leaving that guy, and I'm going to be in a relationship with a non-man, queer, envy, another woman, and then not B, I'm not going back to work. I don't want to go back to my work. I'm not just quiet quitting, I'm loudly quitting. I'm not going back to that shitty corporation, because now I can live with my partner and we can run our own home business. We're doing, creating whatever, shirts, art, code, whatever we do from our household. Like that's what Silver Spoon Games does. Why would I go back to an abusive, shitty corporate, being a rat in a cage, or being a Nosferatu food in a food farm in this corporate exploitative workplace of whatever office, right? Tomato picking or whatever it happens to be. Why would I go back to work there when I could like work from my own non-toxic, non-abusive, actual democratic, actual just household? And then people are just doing that, and that's why the U.S. is making that kind of ties into so the vampiric Dracula like relationship in workplaces all over. Like we just heard that like I have a friend that was working at Unity the game company, right? And she recently along with lots of people were laid off. But why were they laid off, right? Lots of companies, tech companies, game companies, all companies are laying off lots of people. Part of that's AI, and that's a whole other kind of worms. But another impetus along with that, the thing is AI, that kind of stuff it's not like it just showed up. It's really, yes, it got a little bit better, but a major impetus is that the U.S. de-dollarization and the Dracula is having sunlight frying his skin. That's the United States losing its capitalist imperial planetary hegemony. Its mass control is waning as the world's Renfields are the global South, right? The world's abused people are the 90% of the world that they're not even in the room. They're not even hearing a lot of what we're saying because they don't even speak English or French or Spanish. Some speak Spanish. But a lot of them, they're not in Western YouTube or Twitch or Twitter or any of these conversations, right? But they're but they are there, and they are not happy, and they are Africa, Asia, Latin America, Pacific, etc. And so the United States, as the planetary bloodsucker, is running out of that. And so because it's running out of that lifeblood of the sucking the blood, the resource, the literal blood. Sometimes they take the plasma of poor people from the global South, and they use it to experiment on how to, for example, create a new a vaccine for COVID-19. The French just said it out loud. Oh, we'll just use African children to test it on. Now, I'm not saying vaccines are dangerous. I'm saying but if you just we're going to test new and possibly dangerous things to see if they're safe on little black kids. You're literally blood sucking them. Elon Musk and Peter Thiel of Palantir, another Silicon Valley billionaire, literally takes infusions of 14-year-olds' exsanguinated blood that he injects into himself along with other billionaires in an attempt to prolong his lifespan. So he's literally Dracula. So billionaires, a lot of them, and he's not the only one. Peter Thiel and several others suck the blood out of young children with needles. They don't personally come and take a big chomp out of they don't take a big chop on some he doesn't go down to war criminals high school because every American president was a war criminal. He doesn't go to Abraham Lincoln High School, bite into some 13-year-old freshman's arm and suck the blood like Edward Cullen, right? Or Nosferatu. But they do suck the blood out because there was a study done that shows possibly if you take very young people's hemoglobin and the red blood cells and you inject it into yourself, it might prolong your life. It might prolong your life. So taking like 100 children's blood and just storing them in the back, so that's literal Dracula. Also, Peter Thiel and billionaires like that, they stay in their coffins in their little cloistered exurbs, and everyone else in San Francisco and everyone else out in the sunlight getting burnt and getting skin cancer, harvesting their tomatoes and their corn that they're eating. It's another. I mean, it's and I've talked a lot about that, but and so so there's many ways in that's a parasitic, literal blood sucking relationship, and then you also have the fact that and so coming back to the global South versus the global North, and why people were fired at that job. It's because the global South is not allowing itself to be Renfielded. There's a scene where Renfield, right? He kind of Renfield attacks Dracula, right? When he kind of figures out after going through this thing, he's like, you don't have to be the self-help group, right? Is the self-help group? Let me see if I can find the self-help group. Is a group that Renfield goes to try to get help, right, with his abusive relationship. But of course, it's kind of the comedy of that is let me see let's see if I can find that circle. Yeah. I forget what is it called. it's like Alcoholics Anonymous. I just trying to get I just want a picture of that little, yeah, here. So he's sitting in this circle with all these people, right? And this is one of the therapy guy, and he's like talking to them. And usually there's a bunch of people. They're giving their group share, like, I was in an abusive relationship. My husband held on to my cards, or my made me do all these things and yelled at me, and I was working, and he just complained all the time, and yelled at me and then cried at me, and then yelled at me and then cried at me. Never took my needs into consideration. Everyone's sharing, right? And so Renfield he's trying to figure out. The thing is, like, it's actually very important, which is that, like, at any time, Renfield could have stood up to Dracula, right? There's actually a point where the priest, right? There's a scene where the priest and the vampire hunter have Dracula inside of the circle of protection, and they're about to banish him back to hell, or to hell, and get rid of him, right? And Dracula says, without you need me, right? That's another tactic of the abusers, and of unjust blood-sucking relationships. You need me. Without me, Dracula, when I'm gone, they will see what you've done, and you will be hunted down as my servant. You need me, or something else, right? You need me. Without me, you have no purpose in your life. That's another one Dracula uses. Without me, I give you a life purpose. You are just a nothing person. You are just a commoner. You are a peasant. You are a washed up lawyer, and you came to me, to Transylvania, to my great palace, my huge estate, and and I gave you purpose. Now you have a purpose. Your purpose is to serve me, and you are part of the Dracula organization. You're part of the Stepan Bandera worshipping army that will fight the evil, right? Because the West, as I said, pushes into the East a lot of the most horrible people, so they can use them as a fist against against the further East, right? But anyway, planetary imperial proxy war metaphors aside, you need me because something, right? So that's another one. It's like, it's either I need you, I need you. The abuser will go, I need you, I need you, and you're letting me down. Why are you hurting me? I guess that's Stephen Crowder. That's a white man, especially a conservative Christian man. I just learned this. Like my dad is somebody, he didn't cry a whole lot, but I think part of that is he's from the peasantry area, but in my family there's a Japanese and white side of the family, and they're like, and there's a specific kind. They never show emotion, and the Japanese, and and also they survived in tenement housing during the concentration camping of Asians during World War II, and it was a plantation area that they're from, and they had to kind of survive. But also there's something about the culture, especially my family's Asian, and the kind of Asian and the kind of culture that they come from. They don't show any emotion ever. Like they're like stoic as fuck. Like, people can be dying, not quite that, but people, like, they don't talk about anything. They just don't talk. It's kind of, some of it's waspy stuff, and some of it is the Asian stuff, and some of it is surviving genocide and U.S. occupation in the Asian Pacific ghettos of Honolulu. And anyway, so my dad, but it's like, I never seen crying. I didn't see that. I didn't see a lot of that, But then when I visited more like the conservative Christian, like white, like more like the red areas, like some of people that, like, more like the people listen to Jordan Peterson, like the average conservative Christian white dude, there's a lot more crying, and I'm thinking of specific people, and not just them. There's been other areas, but it's definitely a manipulative dude thing. Wow, you crying all the time. What's happening? But it's not like crying because I'm in touch with my feelings. It's like crying because I'm trying to manipulate you into doing something. It's a different thing, right? It's not. Sometimes it might be like, oh, and then, because the thing is, like, if a woman cries, or if they see another dude cry, right? It's, oh, you're being a little girl, right? But if they could be crying, oh, you're hurting me because you didn't do my dishes. Why didn't you just do my dishes? Watch it, or I'll fuck you up. Like, do you think of Stephen Crowder, right? All right. Crying and then being a raging monster, like, right after that, back and forth, whichever one works to get my way, and then that's it, right? And then so I actually know there's, like, actually people that are younger people abusing older people using similar tactics. Even children and parents, I've seen that happen. But anyways, so but this, but then when I saw like this there's all of this and I really thought about it that way. It's like, oh, wow, I didn't realize people could like actually just like put that on. But it kind of makes sense though, because that's what Karens do, right? When a Karen white lady calls the cops on the black person, like birdwatcher in Central Park in New York in 2020, right? During the Floyd Rebellion, and this rich white banker lady who makes $600,000 a year working for some huge financial institution in Manhattan is like literally puts on tears to cry to call the cops, to get the cops to have a lot of urgency to send them to, so they're, oh, white lady in trouble, I gotta come and shoot the black guy. And then there's a video of that, right? Remember, I don't know if it went viral in 2020. And it's like, no, but it's like men can do that too, right? White women weaponize the tears, and then I mean, just men, they certainly are socialized into Western culture, use the rage, and then they use the tears whenever they feel like they can get away with that in a similar way. But then if a woman cries, it's like, why are you being so emotional? Why are you being emotional, right? Why are you being so emotional when it's the guy that's been crying for the last 10 times in a row? Or like it's like in executive boardrooms, if a woman speaks for 5% of the time, there were too many women talking. If women speak for 20% of the time in a boardroom, women dominated the conversation, right? When it's mostly the men talking, and they're like, why are you talking? You talk for like, why are you talking? And she like, the guy just talked for 10 minutes. You talked for like 10 seconds and was like, well, I think I would like to speak about the issue of, oh, why are you talking? I mean, I've seen it happen, and it's like, it's a thing that's like, it's there. It's a thing because it's expected that it's like if a slave gave an order to a master, right? If a black slave picking cotton told the whip cracking master, master, get me a drink of water, immediately be like, why are you talking? You're supposed to be picking cotton, right? It's the response is kind of like that. I give the orders. I do the manipulative crying. You do what I say. If you cry, and so when the women are emotional, the reality is men are actually way more emotional. Just their emotions are rage and manipulative crying. That's their range of emotions in the Western toxic infantile male culture. And like it becomes more and more apparent as time goes on, because they're getting worse. The men are getting worse and worse and worse and worse, as they're not having any sex, like I bring up frequently. 65% of straight cis men are not getting any dates on dating apps. And part of that is because, I mean, part of it is like, I don't really know what to do with it. It's a difficult question, right? I think it's like, what counts as masculine, like what counts as like quote unquote male, like will eventually have to evolve inside of the Western world. But it's kind of like, it's not up to, I don't think like it's up to women and non-men to help them, It's the men have to come to that themselves. It's kind of like Renfield's job is not to make Dracula, right? Like when he's talking to his therapist, right, in this scene, Renfield's job is not to educate, make, teach, help, or Renfield doesn't have to stop Dracula from being a terrible, parasitic, abusive person. Renfield's job is to liberate Renfield by taking his power and being, I am going to grow to my maximum power. I'm going to give myself what I deserve, and not give all of my energy and life and blood supply and everything else. I'm not going to give all of my time and energy and investment of my life resources into you, abusive person. I'm going to give it to myself and become an independent person from you, right? And then Nick, you say that and then do it, which is another thing that has to be worked on, and so then that is a and so that is what has to happen. It can't be like women have to just feel sorry for men. I see a lot of things, right? These things it's usually just paid for by some right wing man who's trying to make Western culture go backwards, right? Or trying to make people in the United States, not the United States itself as a power structure, but trying to make young people especially go backwards by paying for right-wing TikTok, paying influencers on YouTube, TikTok, and other places to say things like, this is the best relationship, and have a woman like serving her man and just like while he plays video games and doesn't say thank you or anything, right? And that's relationship goals. But they're being paid to do that. The same way like most of the people in the United States support LGBTQ plus rights, but there are people that are paying a lot of money, certainly from right-wing conservative elements, to push into the culture that trans people are dangerous, drag queens are dangerous, LGBTQ plus people are dangerous groomers, and we should all hate them, right? When that's actually not where most people actually lie, right? Now, there are some people, right? There are some people who are still being, led along into the Steven Crowder, Jordan Peterson world, going, men have to just women have to go back in the kitchen. Feminism is cancer, and we have to go back to some kind of strong man's world or something where men run everything again. But those people are finding themselves not able to. They're not, they put a lot of money into it, but it's a thing that people, once so many people, I think, have had a taste of what it's like to not be some toxic, shitty, deadbeat, nothing asshole dudes, parasitic, Renfield, as a wife, as a partner, as an employer, and as an employee, as a as a whatever, for even a friend. I don't have a lot of friends that are straight cis dudes anymore. I don't really want to talk to a lot of them because they're shitty. I mean, a lot of the time, not every single one of them, but it's kind of like, if you still are especially if you are strongly identifying as a man in the United States, in the Western world, it gives bad signals. You know what I'm saying? It's like people who have American flags all over their bio. It's kind of like, oh, I don't know about that. If you have like red hats, and especially in 2018, like you got like red hats, American flags. I'm like, I mean, maybe you're not a bad person, but I mean, I have a lot of bad experiences. Why am I going to, like, if I have an array of options of where I can invest my time, why am I going to invest my time into some straight cis dude? Why am I, if it doesn't have to be that person, right? If I can just, I had like, as Holly's like, I've been around, I have like so many brothers. I have, I had my father, I had all these men, I had all these other guys I've worked in public facing jobs for years and years. I've been encountered so many people, men and women and other people. And, my experiences are just like, I don't want to have any relationships with white cis men. I mean, white men and a lot of cis men generally, because I've had like so many terrible experiences, and I haven't had different experiences with other people. So, I mean, it's not like, oh, immediately if you're a cis guy, you are automatically a terrible person. But it's like, you have to, it has to, it has to be like, you have to go a little extra to prove that. And I'm gonna err on the side of like, not, it's kind of like if you're going to go and you're going to, if you're going to go and pick some apples, right? Are you going to go in the orchard where you look at it, it's like, oh my God, this orchard's got like, it's all like brown leaves everywhere and looks like it hasn't been tended for a long time. And oh my gosh, like, it's like, it's just very well managed. Or are you gonna go in the area that, well, I mean, because you might find some apples and oranges that, in that orchard, but it's just like, as a rule of thumb, like, I don't, unless I kind of have to, I'm not gonna keep going back because I keep getting screwed over. It's another thing, right? It's like, it's the fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me kind of thing. So, and that, again, that's to say that like, the onus is on the people who are the abusers to stop being abusers if they would like to have anything, and the onus, there is a responsibility of the abused peoples, of the Renfields, but it's not to change. I don't think it's not actually to change the abusers. That's why I actually think that it's if possible, building a completely new cooperative, non-abusive company, business entity, right? Outside of Hollywood, even the Disney, fuck Disney. It's like trying to change the CEOs of a giant capitalist horrible corporation, CEO of whether that's Disney or Walmart or whatever, right? That you're striking it against. I mean, striking it is good, but negotiating better wages from Dracula is not as good as starting a non-Dracula run business. Does that make sense? Why try to just negotiate? I mean, if possible, sometimes it's not possible. Well, the only castle we have is Dracula's castle. We're all in the vampire castle of capitalism. Well, number A, that's because you live in London with Mark Fisher, who also is, he had a very doomer outlook. Let's put it that way. And I think that's because you're too much stuck in the Anglo-Western world. But B, like, I think that's limiting the possibilities, right? And I still will support all unionization and striking. It's better to have workers empower themselves. But as a whole, if you really want to have a better healed society, you have to what would the advisor who is a person whose job is to help people in abusive codependent relationships, what would they say? Would they say, oh, what you should do is don't do the dishes for like 3 days and then hope that your husband that beats you and yells at you and doesn't have a job, right? Or just cries and yells and doesn't do anything, right? Should you don't do the dishes for 3 days so that he gives you a foot rub and then hope that he doesn't go back to beating you? Or should you just leave that husband? What would your mental health specialist say? Just go on a 3-day strike till your husband gives you better wages and then hope he doesn't fuck you up again and be mean to you and be terrible again? Or should you get the fuck out of there? In a certain sense, like, you're actually prolonging the suffering. You know, I mean, you might get some benefits from that, and maybe he'll change. But in another sense, you know, maybe now somebody said, well, Silver Spook, if I just leave McDonald's, I just got to go work for Burger King. Well, I mean, that's what I'm saying. I'm like, we have to start entirely new. That's why I started the Silver Spook Cooperative, because I didn't want to go back and work for a parasitic. I've worked for corporate, government, and nonprofit entities. They're all terrible. They're all fucking terrible because they're all Western capitalist, colonial, colonizer entities that have unjust structures. There are even some worker cooperatives that they say that they're that, but internally they're structured like a capitalist corporation where all the workers have most of the money going to a handful of people at the very top, but they call themselves that. So it's, you know, just calling that's the whole democratic strategy, is to call yourself one thing and be the other thing. The U.S. calls itself a democracy, but it's a plutocracy. It's a racist, capitalist, imperialist plutocracy. So, but that doesn't mean that you can't start new things, run in a non-abusive, non-unjust way. But it is hard. It is hard. It's hard. And that's why democracy at work and the cooperative Mondragon and Huawei can help you with that. They actually have professional teams of people that come over from a 100,000 plus person one of the world's largest cooperatives, Mondragon. They come to coach workers who are trying to break away from their electric companies. There's a lot of them actually in New York, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Electric companies, bakeries. Even Ace is run in a heavily cooperative way. Home Depot is not, and Home Depot has to have terrible right-wing CEOs that have really terrible views on a lot of things, right? But it's a capitalist corporation, and a lot of times that goes together. So it doesn't mean that your cooperative will have zero problems, right? Because no relationship has zero problems. But if you have a really toxic relationship in your business entity, like being in a marriage with Dracula, I don't know if you're going to be able to fix that relationship by not feeding Dracula. Renfield actually tries to not feed Dracula for a little bit. He tries it. What if I just don't do what Dracula says? I'm just going to not do it for a little bit. I'm just not do it. And sometimes that helps. Maybe, right? And then Dracula's like, kills everyone that he loves. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that your boss, if you withhold labor, is just gonna come and do something super illegal and murderous. My point is that the toxic relationships have to be largely, and also the imperial relationships. Why end of U.S. illegal occupation with Hawaii? There is no relationship that the United States doesn't have. The United States has a toxic relationship with its own citizens, even the white ones, right? And it definitely has a toxic Dracula relationship with the black and the brown and the queer ones and the women. For sure. And especially the underpaid immigrant labor that are currently not working because of DeSantis' ridiculous, totally misguided law, right? So the U.S. has toxic, abusive Dracula relationships with its own citizens, and it definitely has abusive relationships with other countries like Hawaii and the rest of the global South, because actually Hawaii is an illegally occupied country. So Hawaii's solution is, United States, please. We Hawaiians, please, Dracula, United States, stop poisoning our water, stop suppressing our culture, stop treating us like garbage, and stop making us literally the most overrepresented in prison, the poorest and the most homeless ethnic minority of all, Native Hawaiians. We're actually the at the bottom, even beneath black people and even other indigenous people in many of much of the rubric. like prison. We're the most over incarcerated, 4 times more likely to go to prison. Please, Dracula, United States, stop hurting Hawaii, the Renfield. That's not how it is. Hawaii needs to grow into our full power as an indigenous, socialist, LGBTQ plus rights respecting, most advanced country that we were before the U.S. illegal occupation. Right? But a lot of people in Hawaii are still gaslit, and they believe, oh, America's the best thing since sliced bread. My parents, they believe America's great because my parents are like Renfield earlier on in the relationship. Well, I can't leave my abusive husband of the United States because without Hawaii, we're just all backwards. Well, what do we do? We have no purpose. We all just be like, dancing in hula skirts and living in mud huts, and we have no electricity. If the U.S. military goes away, oh, another abuser will hurt us. Oh no, China's gonna come take us over. How's China treating Cuba? Is China come and take over Cuba? How's China treating other countries that are not literal colonies of the United States? Is it just no? It's not. But when other Americans copy their neocon U.S. Imperial State Department talking points, like if U.S. leaves Hawaii, China will take it over. What they're doing, that is a Dracula tactic. If you leave me, no one will love you. If you leave me, someone else will hurt you. The people will hurt you because you are a servant. If you leave me, you will have no purpose. If you leave me, right? That's the United States doing the man crying against Native Hawaiians, right? And that's why if you repeat those talking points anywhere, you are a garbage person, and you will go to hell with Dracula when we put you in a cocaine magic circle and banish you there. So, anyways, I'm just kidding. You're not going to go to. Well, you will go to hell, but we're not going to use cocaine for the circle. Anyways, because we don't do illegal substances that will be a TOS violation. Anyways, so Dracula is so in this relationship consulting, in this relationship, to get out of these these abusive relationships, Renfield goes to this group, right? And he's talking to them, and eventually he does come to the decision. I have to get out of this. I have to get out of this. But and most of the movie is basically about that, exploring. Now there's blood and guts, and there's fights, and people get their heads chopped off. Like I said, I'm focusing a lot of it on this aspect of the movie. The movie is just a fun action movie, and it's got Nicolas Cage being a goofy, extra campy, hilarious, a long-fanged vampire. It's got Awkwafina being silly. It's got what's his name, Ben Schwartz being a funny a guy who throws cocaine at people as a weapon. And it's got Viscerala from The Expanse. She's the Iranian actress who is in the U.S. I think now, but it's very entertaining. It's got Nicholas Hoult, but that's a lot of what is the most interesting parts of it. It's certainly in terms of like speaking about it at length is this part that I'm focusing on. Anyways, so Nicholas Hoult character Renfield he comes to the decision, but it really takes a long time. He's not comfortable to even talk about it in the beginning, which is normal. That's part of the process, right? You don't want to even talk about this relationship that you have, right, in the beginning, and then you later on, you might come to, oh wow. When you're hearing the other people's stories, that camaraderie does help to get to the point of even acknowledging, wow, maybe I do need to do something about this, right? Or maybe this is a problem that I do have. And so talking to other people who have similar experiences is important. I mean, just as a pro tip for if people who think they might be in such relationships, I mean, the reality is, if you work anywhere in the United States under capitalism, you are in an abusive relationship. Period. The thing is, there is no abused employees anonymous. Well, I guess there's unions, and then there's cooperatives, but it's the United States doesn't want to allow those to exist, because then you would realize that you can't really. The thing is, if you are in a position where you have to go back to work for another one of these entities, then you can't ever really come back into you can't ever really get better from that. You have to have a healed group. You have to have a healed community to get healing. You can't just like heal inside your mind and then go back into an abusive relationship. That's another thing that they tell you in therapy. Like if you go back to the abuser, I mean, even like a different abuser, you're not gonna actually heal. I mean, you can understand kind of more about where you are, but actually therapy can make things worse, because if you're isolated in therapy, you might unearth all of these traumas and stuff, but then not have the community to actually do any of the actual existing in positive healed life ways in this kind of individualized, consumerist, like very very capitalist style. Pay for X amount of time with somebody who will listen to your problems and then give you suggestions, and then you're done, right? And as if that fixes it, right? As if that heals all these problems. It doesn't. It doesn't. It can't. How can it be expected to, right? What it does is it makes a lot of money for people who certainly. I'm not saying that people who do therapy are not good listeners or can help people, but it's an industry that is there to put a band-aid on cancer that is Western civilization, that is colonial capitalist and patriarchal and cis-heteronormative, right? Now, and it's a kind of it's like if you come to the circle, get some help, and then you go back to Dracula. I mean, yeah, you'll feel better when you talk it out a little bit, and you'll know a little bit better. And then if you go back to Dracula or Dracula 2, again, right, you're not ever actually going to be out of and heal from that toxic relationship that you were in. And I've said these same words several times, so I'll stop repeating that. Let's go back to finish. This is 113. So anyways, I think that's mostly what I wanted to say, because that is the that's the main that's like one of the main themes of the show. I mean, just again in general, if you want something that's silly action, a lot of people getting punched, getting their heads ripped off, you got like 1940s, square aspect ratio, black and white Nicolas Cage, like literally being like a 1940s vampire, with cheesy lighting in that one section and funny effects, and like lots of blood, people getting their arms ripped off and then beaten with their bloody arms, like using arms as nunchucks. It's very like New Zealand horror. It reminds me of early Peter Jackson stuff, or just like the kind of stuff that comes out of that strange island there, where Taika Waititi is a strange thing that's come out of Aotearoa, New Zealand. So, and also likes vampire movies as well. But anyways, so it's very entertaining, and it's a horror movie. So if you don't like blood, then you might not want to watch that one. But and anyways, and so speaking of liberation from gender, we'll be finishing in a second here. But speaking of liberation from gender, I have recently posted this video. So I just want to share this with you. And this is a video about being a girl in a short skirt and a long jacket. That is, I have rewritten and reperformed a song by the 90s, as I said, alternative artist Cake. They did the songs like Going the Distance and Italian Leather Sofa, and the other song called Short Skirt Long Jacket. And this is me being liberated from my own colonial oppressors, and also being and also from, as I said, the colonial Western gender roles, and being a full indigenous third gender person, or also known as Mahu. And I have it on my Instagram, so maybe I'll just show that one. See if I can get that up here. You can also follow this Instagram if you want more style tips and also anti-colonial diatribes. Okay, where's the audio? Okay, I hope you can see this. I am a girl with a mind. Hold up, let me redo that one more time. Oh, wait, on this. I am a girl with a mind like a diamond. I am a girl who knows what's best. I am a girl with shoes, haircut, and eyes that burn like a lava goddess. I am a girl with all your needed citations. I'm fast and thorough and sharp as a tack. I'm rocking my jewelry, I'm putting up my hair. I'm touring your facility and modding the slack. I am a girl with a short skirt and a long jacket. Anyways, so if you like that, you can go watch the rest of it. I don't want to put too much of it because I think like YouTube, I'm not sure if they, it's just a for fun song, but I don't know about if YouTube is gonna like putting any more of that. So you can watch the rest of that on the it's on my Twitter as well if you wanna find it there. And that is a song that is about having a short skirt and a long jacket, but also it's not just part of it was commentary on the fact that when the song was made, I rewrote it because when the song was made, it said things like, I am a girl who earns, it says, I want a girl with uninterrupted prosperity who uses a machete to cut through red tape. And I was like, I don't really like that. Like, I don't want a girl who is like a Robert Rubin Clintonite Democrat that wants to make tons of money doing Wall Street speculation. Because that's basically what it's about. It's about meeting a girl in Citibank. And I was like, I don't want to meet in Citibank. I don't want to go into Citibank. So I rewrote it. I was like, I'm a girl who earns her prosperity, who bulldozes your rich daddy's boy estates. Speaking about tearing down patriarchal, capitalistic reality. And also, in the song, it also says, I'm changing my name from Karen to Kitty. It says, she's changing her name from Kitty to Karen. Well, number one, I rewrote it as not as I want a girl with a short skirt. It's I am a girl with a short skirt because I am a non-binary person that doesn't present as Western male and female gender roles. I present in a variety of ways, and sometimes they're more feminine than others. Like in this example. And also, it's why would somebody change their name in 2020s from Kitty to Karen? Who wants to be the Karen cop calling nasty lady, right? Who wants to be that person? Like, so I was like, Doja Cat, as I said on Twitch, Doja Cat changed her name from, just a normal non-name, just a non-cat name to Doja Cat. So people are changing the names to cat, and it's working out really well because Doja Cat's famous is like at the Met Gala, being a literal cat, like in full sci-fi prosthetic makeup, like she's gonna be on the Broadway musical Cats, and also ACAB and All Karens Are Bad. So I rewrote the lyrics, anyways. And so if you want that song, you can go and get that at the you can go listen to it anyways at the Bandcamp where I put it up over there. Yeah, so that has nothing to do with Renfield. That's just I did that, and so I spent like 2 days basically writing the song, recording this song, making a video for it, and then recording and editing the video and then sharing it around. So appreciate all the work I have done. That's basically what I'm saying. Anyways, everything that we do here is also, as always, supported by the sales of Neofeud, which is on Steam, and it is on itch.io. It is a cyberpunk adventure game that is in the vein of this is not related to vampire stuff, but it is a game about the unjust parasitical relationships, blood-sucking relationships of colonialism, capitalism, racism, but in a fun cyberpunk dystopian satirical adventure game where you play a social worker for homeless robots and discarded half-human animal hybrids in a wasteland sprawl planet with billionaire feudal colonizers living in their palaces floating above the wasteland. So if that sounds interesting, check out Neofeud. Speaking of counts, there are literal counts in Neofeud. That's a connection with Renfield. There are literal counts, lords, and ladies, and marquis and marquess in Neofeud. So, and they're bloodsuckers. They do suck blood. They literally suck people out and put them inside of these facilities. And so if you want to get Neofeud, it is also on, if you can leave even a very short review, it is massively appreciated. Consider also leaving some support for us if you appreciate the stream and or the education and entertainment or both. Consider a one-time support by buying a coffee. Really does, every little bit really does help. Or consider becoming a Patreon member at patreon.com/Neofeud, where you can give us ongoing support, get access to the Silver Spook Discord, behind the scenes content on what we're doing, and the Silver Spook University, that is 1,000+ hours of everything I've ever made, video and otherwise, categorized according to topic. Also, don't forget you can get Neofeud as well on itch.io for Windows, for Mac, and for Linux. On itch, you can also get other games like Decolonators, Indigistar, Pigeon with Gun, where you play a pigeon fighting giant robot gajillionaires, and tons of cops with a gun as a pigeon. And you can also get Woman, which is a book by my partner Holly, which is written by, speaking of being raised in a toxic, abusive culture, being raised in right-wing evangelical Protestant Christianity, and it is not a historical retelling, but a work of fiction that lends a different perspective to what is usually read in the Bible. And so it is also free, or you can throw some money our way when you pick it up. Follow at Silverspook Games, at octodon.social, and or Silverspook Games at mastodon.social on Mastodon. I noticed I did get an invite to Blue Sky, but I have not joined it yet. I see some people have joined it, but I have not yet. But you can follow at Silverspook Guy on Twitter, at Silverspook Games minus the E in silver for the game stuff. We have multiple Instagrams. There's the games Instagram, and then there's the Silverspook Glams, Silverspook Games and Silverspook Glams. The Glams one is for my that's where I be the other aspects of my gender that are not encapsulated in Western ideas of what gender are. And I've already talked at length about that. So I be a non-binary / Mahu or Native Hawaiian third gender person on Instagram more frequently. Although I do have my avatar changed, as I said last week. You can follow at Silverspook Guy, and then also don't forget you can follow Terminus C on Twitter for the games. Other game I'm working on, a Deus Ex System Shock like cyberpunk RPG. It is a low poly cyberpunk immersive sim, and it is a game that is coming sometime in the near future. So if you like those kinds of games, you want to follow this game, you can follow at Terminus C, and also you can join the Discord. And don't forget to follow Holly. Holly is followable at the Tech Fairy. Holly is educator, moderator here, married to myself, producer, manager, and helps make the show run for the Kate Nix monthly interactive variety special. I will be on, in fact, the Kate Nix stream next week, Tuesday, at 8 Eastern, for the open mic. It's a digital online open mic night, and that song you were just listening to a little bit of, that song will be included in the open mic series of videos. So check, if you want to see the rest of that, you can tune in there. I will also be in the chat there. So don't forget to follow Holly for all those things. Holly also primary caregiver, manager here at the Silverspook Games, and also writes. As I said, you can get all those links on the link tree. And thank you to all the people who continue to support us so generously. It is hugely appreciated. Without your ongoing help, we cannot continue to keep doing the work that we do in terms of education, entertainment, making the games, streams, videos, and etc. So thank you very much to all these people on this list. Until next time, keep your vampire fangs polished. Actually, don't polish your vampire's fangs. Let him do it himself, okay? And he or he can like pay someone a fair and living wage to do such things. But ideally, dudes just gotta learn how to do their own goddamn hygiene, And I speak somebody socialized as a Western dude. So thank you very much to all the patrons, and have fun. And we will see you later on if you want to stop into Twitch. And I lost my stop button.